So I'm going to make a bowl from a board using scraps that I have left over. And I started with this segmented ring out of mahogany. I got an 1/8 inch piece of MDF. These will be the frame, if you will, for pouring the epoxy between the scraps. I am going to paint this whole bottom with glue to try to seal it so epoxy won't flow through, and glue these two together. I have a number of scrap pieces I'm going to cut up and put into this bowl from a board. The smaller ones I'm going to use this clamp. The larger ones I'll just hand hold. So some of the pieces I cut have raggedy edges. I'm going to disc sand them just to get that off because I don't want that showing in my bowl. Alright, so I am working on this bowl from a board, and I've got all these little scraps in here, and I'm going to glue them down. I'm going for a pattern that looks something like this. I'm going to pull a bunch of them out. So I have this glued to the table using tape on both sides and super glue and accelerator in the middle. I have programmed in a circle it's a little bit bigger than this, maybe an inch bigger, and I have a 1-inch surfacing bit on the router. So now I have a flat bowl from a board ready to cut, and I need to do the design. The first thing I need to know is how thick it is. I'll measure that. It is 0.9 inches thick. So I'll set that up there. I'll bring this down. Now I'm going to draw 2 parallel lines, 0.9 inches apart. Okay, the first decision you have to make is how big do you want the bottom. I want the bottom to be about 4.5 inches, which, if this is the middle of the bowl, so this is mid, 4.5 would be 2.25 out. The bottom's on my side. 2.25. The next thing you need to decide is what angle do you want. Since I got a little bit thicker bowl now with 0.9, I'm going to go with a less steep angle to start with. So I think I'm going to go with 40 degrees. To start with, and then I will get smaller as I go. So lining up the protractor. So my first cut will be like this. This is the bottom, which is 4.5 inch. And so let me just see so it'll be 2 3/4 times 2, 5. This will be 5.5 inches on the top that I'll make my cut, and that's where I'm going to draw my circles because my bandsaw cuts this way. So then you draw a vertical line straight down from that where it intersects. And your next piece is going to start here, which should give me, it's a hair over 1/2 inch wall thickness. It's not 9/16, but it's close. So this was 40 degrees. I'm going to do one more at 40, and then I'm going to start reducing. What I'm trying to do is get the bowl to come up and slow. It's always going to have to be going out because otherwise you can't stack the rings. But I'm going to try to slow the amount that it goes out over time. So that's my next ring, and then you do the same process with a vertical line. There is math to do this, and I'm an engineer by training, but this makes sense to me, and nothing like visual. Okay, so that's my second cut. Now I'm going to, you can't drop the angle too fast. Only 2 or 3 degrees at a time is the suggestion. And since I got a little bit thicker board, I'm going to go for 3-degree increments. So my next angle, this is 40. My next angle will be 37 degrees. Okay, so that's where I draw my circles. Now I am ready to go to my bowl, or my board, and start drawing lines. So I'm going to find the center first. Okay, so that's my center. So now I want to set, I want 2 3/4. Okay, so I have a visible circle. I have a circle that I can see, and I just need to be able to see it when I'm under the bandsaw. Okay, so now I have a series of concentric rings that I can cut on the bandsaw. So I have all my circles on here, and the first step is to cut this in half so I can cut this on the bandsaw. Okay, so I am going to start next by cutting the inner circle. And the reason I'm going to start on the inner one is so I have a lot more to hold on when I get to the end. Okay, my first cuts are 40 degrees. So I'm trying to set the table. 0 this, 0.1, pretty close. .1, so that's 40 degrees. Okay, like I mentioned, I got the table set at 40, and I'm going to cut the inner circle first so I have more to hang on to. And the first 2 cuts are 40, so I'm going to go ahead and make both of them on this half and then move to the other one. Okay, I got the 2 40-degree cuts. The next several cuts are all 37, so I need to change the angle on the table. So all the rings are cut, and this is pretty much how it's going to go together. So you can see so the next step will be to glue the half rings back together. This ring has a big patch of nothing but epoxy there. A smaller one there that would probably be all right, but this one worries me. So I'm going to glue this next ring on using Starbond 5-minute epoxy. I now have epoxy on both sides. Where to go sideways so I can pull it in. And I have a match mark that I have to find here on both sides. So that's a match mark that I put on there. So this ring is now on with epoxy. You can see my match mark better in this view. But I drew this line down the side with a Sharpie so that I didn't have to search for alignment while I was trying to do the glue up, especially with the epoxy since it sets so fast. So this epoxy says in 30 to 60 minutes. It's got a pretty good bond. So I'm going to try in 30 minutes to sand that ring and add another one. So I have 5 rings added onto the bowl from a board. 2 more to go. But before I add them on, I'm going to smooth out the outside just to make sure it's round so it doesn't wobble. And then I'll try to finish on the inside. I'm using a negative rake scraper because there isn't much to take off. So I've got the inside almost done, and I am switching to a less aggressive negative rake, which is a round carbide from Easy Tools. So I have all 7 rings glued on. The outside down here was turned yesterday to get it pretty round, but still needs some finish turning. And obviously this needs a lot of turning. Yeah, I am declaring the turning portion of this finished. I am actually down close to 1/8 of an inch wall thickness in a couple of places. So I am going to fill those holes with a matching sawdust of that. Okay, I'm about to wrap up this bowl from a board. I've filled some of the holes with appropriate color sawdust, and I don't like how wide this ring came out, so I'm going to cut off, I don't know, 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch of it. The rest of the bowl, since it's so thin, I'm just going to go with sanding. So I'm not going to show all the sanding. Okay, I have this bowl sanded to my satisfaction and ready to put on friction polish. Oops, that's water on my fingers. So I'm going to put on 2 coats of friction polish and then let it cure overnight. It's looking pretty good. So 2 coats of carnauba wax and it's ready to cut off.